What's up guys, Matt with BleepinJeep. Everything off-road, none of the boring stuff. Today we're working on an 09 Toyota Tundra. And if you're about to complain in the comments section below, don't bother. Because it says right in the title what you're getting yourself into. So you're the one that clicked it. But today, not only are we going to replace the bearings, but we're going to replace the seal. We're going to replace some of the drum brake stuff. So if there's anything in this general area that you need to know how to replace, we're going to cover it today. Let's get started. This is my daily driver, and it's also my tow rig. And on the other side, the bearings went out. They were so bad that I could just shake this up and down. And the Tundra bearings are much different than anything I've ever seen before. And there weren't a lot of good videos on this. So, if you follow along with this video and you watch me replace that bearing, I think you'll be able to replace bearings on any Toyota, whether it be a 4Runner or a first gen or second gen Tundra, whatever, RAV4, I don't know. So let me first tell you why I'm replacing the wheel bearings. Like I said, on the other side, it was so loose that I could shake it up and down. That's how you know that you have a bad wheel bearing. Not only that, it was so bad that it ruined the seal, so I started to have gear oil leaking out and slinging onto the inside of the wheel. And you could hear a grinding noise or kind of a clicking noise. Also, there is a wheel speed sensor in there, and I was just ignoring the problem for as long as I could. But then the wheel speed sensor crapped out, because once that bearing gets wobbling around, it messes up your wheel speed sensor, which rides actually in the bearing. Once the wheel speed sensor goes, the computer starts freaking out and flashing lights and doing crazy stuff because it can't read your wheel speed anymore. To do this, you're probably going to need a bearing. You might need a wheel speed sensor because I broke mine off, the original one, trying to get it out. You're going to need the seals, the wheel bearing seal, and there's an outer O-ring seal. You might as well go ahead and replace the differential fluid while you're in here. Maybe the brakes, the parking brake is in here, so you might want to replace those. Anything that has wear, or if you just want to go ahead and replace it now while you're in here, that is a good idea. First thing that we need to do is start removing all this stuff, so let's get to that. Pretty much everything back here is 17mm, and if your Tundra is like mine, it's going to be super rusty, so you might want to spray some penetrating lube on there a couple days in advance. First, take your caliper off and set it aside. That's step number one. Let's see if we can get the rotor off. I'm putting new ones on, so I'm not too worried about destroying it. A couple of good smacks and that'll come off. So this is pretty hard to get off, but there's a little clip in here for the wheel speed sensor. You pull that back with a little screwdriver and you'll be able to pry this back. Try not to break that thing, because that would really suck. Now, there's a few more bolts in here. There's 4 that hold the everything together, the wheel bearing on, and then there's 2 right here that hold the emergency brake, and there's a little bolt there that you'll need to undo, and there's one more for the wheel speed sensor. Can't see and record in here at the same time, but don't pull the wheel speed sensor out right now if you're going to take the bearing out, because you're going to break it. So I'm just going to leave that in there for now. Alright, so normally you would have to disconnect the brake line to get everything, this whole assembly, to slide off. It's so rusty though that I know it's going to break. If I try to undo that, the brake line's going to break, then I'll have to replace the whole thing. So instead of doing that, what we're going to do is pull out this clip. There we go. Alright, once you get that clip off, you can slide this through, and we're going to cut this bracket. Most other vehicles have that already cut, and then you can just slide it through without having to disconnect it. So that's what we're going to do, make a little modification to that bracket. I'll use an air die grinder with a cutoff wheel. I can just slide it out like that and set it aside. Now we need to disconnect the emergency brakes or the parking brakes, whatever you want to call them. We need to get those out of here. So there's a little keeper right here. You just grab it, hold it back, turn that 90 degrees. Or sometimes you can turn the back 90 degrees if you can get to it. There we go. And then that'll come off like that. There's one on the other side, and then these will come out. One thing I like to do is keep all my parts right there so they don't go anywhere. Now this should separate. There's a little spring here. Pull that off. This comes out. Spring up top. Go. We need to open this up, take that off so that this can come out, and then this will come out the back side. Alright, with all that free, we should be able to pull this whole thing out. Let's see. It's going to need some effort. Alright, so if you're just replacing the axle seal, this is the axle seal. I'll leave this part number in the description down below. But let's go ahead and remove this. I'll show you how. Just get one of these cheap pullers. You're going to put this in here and just pop it out like that. And that axle seal is what keeps the differential fluid from the pumpkin, the differential, from coming out and getting all over the place. Now there's another seal here which is very hard to find. I was only able to find this at Napa and at the Toyota dealership. And it's about 3.5 inches, or about, I think that was, what, 79 millimeters, something like that. I'll leave a part number again down in the description. And we'll install the seal here in a little while, but before I do that, I want to show you how to make your own seal press tool out of the parts that we're going to have left over. And all through this process, make sure you clean everything up good. You want to put it back together nice and clean. Okay, now let's see if we can salvage the wheel speed sensor. We're going to unbolt it here. Ow. Now clean it up around the edges real good. Okay, so if you try to pry that out from here without taking this off, you're most likely going to break your wheel speed sensor. Then you'll have to take all this off anyway to this point. What I saw a trick on YouTube, a guy put a screwdriver here and tried to push it out. Is it going to work? I don't know. But we're going to give it a shot. We'll try to push and pry at the same time. How about that? Come on. Now I have another one just in case. And I'll leave a link for you for Amazon too. If you buy these at the dealer, they are really expensive, but if you buy them on Amazon, you can get them for like 22 bucks, I think is what I paid for new ones. Alright, I was able to get it out without breaking it. I'm going to replace it anyway, because that's just pretty nasty. But if that does break off in there, what you do is you take a drill bit, the right size, and just drill it out from the outside in, and then clean up all the pieces from the inside. That's what I did on the other one. Alright, next up there's a little retaining ring right here that you need to get off. So, screwdriver would be handy. Pop that open and pull it up. There we go, that's the retaining ring. Make sure to put this aside so you know where it's at. Don't lose that thing. Okay, now comes the fun part. You need to press that collar and the bearings and all of that off the axle shaft. And to do that, you're going to need to either A, buy a special tool that's about $300, or make your own. I've chosen to make my own. So what I did here, I took a thick piece of steel. I've cut holes in it that match these dowels here. I have a big pipe, and then I've necked it down to a smaller pipe. You don't have to neck it down if you have a piece long enough. This is just scrap that I had lying around. And then on the end, it's got a hole there. Now, if you had an extra one of these, which I could make this bottom plate out of this now, but I didn't have it at the time because I hadn't pressed it off yet. But that's basically what you're looking for right there, with a long piece attached to it, so that and a top plate attached to it, so that this will go in your press and you can press this all apart, and I'll show you that here in a minute. I'll leave a link down in Amazon, but with some scrap that I had, and I'll show you how large these are. So just for reference, this tube here is 3.5 inches. This one is 2 inches. Now this slides over the top. And then we're going to bolt that down here. And now this is a 20-ton press I got at Harbor Freight. You can get them for about 130 bucks. And it's all you need to take this apart. And now we're going to hopefully press that sucker right out of there. Put your safety goggles on. Woo! So more than likely the race from the bottom bearing is still going to be on there, so we have to pull this off as well. And that is where your bearing separator tool comes in handy here. We're going to slide that under, and then we'll do the same thing. And what's cool is we can use the tool that I just showed you, the one that I made, to remove this as well. I plasma cut out another hole here, so I will have just the perfect spacing to bite down on this. I assume if you buy one of these tools it'll come with that as well, but I'm not sure. Alright, so there's the bearing race that we just pulled out. And hang on to that, because we're going to use that here in just a little bit to make a tool out of. Now the seal is still in there, so grab you a little hook, and we're going to pull up on that and remove the old seal. Make sure to clean everything up real good. Now we're down to just the bare axle shaft. We still need to work, however, on this piece here. So hang on to this. There's a little washer here. Hang on to that. And everything else needs to come out. So this is part of the old bearing, and we need to separate that from the backing plate, unless you're getting a new backing plate, which I'm not sure if they make these new. So we need to separate this and reuse all of this. Now to remove it, these studs are actually pressed into the bearing from the other side, just like a wheel stud would be, and we need to press them back out. So before I do that, I want to put these nuts down flush with the bolt, so when I press on it, it doesn't mess up the bolt, and if it does, I can back it off and it won't be messed up. So let's get that like that, and then on the back side, we're going to take some sort of a socket, something that's just big enough to go around that. We'll put it here, and we'll use the press to press here. On the other one, it was so rusty and corroded that I had to use heat. We'll see if that has to happen this time. So those were stubborn, but they didn't require heat. If they did, you just put pressure on it with your press and then use your torch and put heat on it. If you don't have a torch like this, you can buy one of those MAP gas torches or whatever at Home Depot. Same thing. Okay, the bolts are out. Now we should be able to separate this. We put that here. Or not. Whoa, that almost got my foot. Okay, now let's clean up all of our mating surfaces. I'm going to clean up this side and the side on the truck still. And I've just got a brush on here. And let's do this. Nice and clean. Okay, now it's time for the bearing to go in. This is a Timken bearing. I like this one better than the other one, which was a Moog. It has this nice plastic piece to keep everything together. The other one kept falling apart on me. The seal is on this side, so you don't have to worry about that. It's already there. And this ring right here is the ring that your wheel speed sensor rides against to let you know, or the computer know, how fast you're going. Oh, one thing I should tell you, if this bearing is not all the way seated like this to where that you can see that hole, if you can't see that hole, take the bearing race out and push the ball bearings down in further. There's a little recess they go into, and then put the race back in. That's what happened to me on the first bearing, and I put everything together, went to press it all together, and it just wouldn't press. And it took me a while to figure out the problem. So make sure you can see that hole right now. And these go through here, and we're gonna have to press those back in. So we'll do that on the press again. Basically just the opposite of last time. We're gonna put a big socket on this side, and we're gonna press on this side. Alright guys, check this out. I've got some grease. This is the way I do my grease. I put a paintbrush inside there. Anyway, I'm going to grease everything up real good so when this bearing is going on, it doesn't have any issues. You got to remember there's a seal on there as well that goes over this bottom piece down here. So everything's clean. I'm going to grease it up here as well. Grease the inside of the bearing. Just like so. Now these are the rings from before. That one goes first, and then this one. And we are going to now press that all the way down. Now here's the thing. Here's the axle that I already pressed. You need to press it all the way down until you can see that ring so you can put this retaining clip in. The problem is these bolts are in the way, and you need to find something that will press just on this collar. I found this piece that I just had in my scrap bin, and that's going to be perfect. It sits right here. It's not too small. If it's too small, it'll bind up as this gets larger because it's tapered near the end. So you can use a piece of pipe. Even just a short piece of pipe would work really well. It'd have to be fairly large, like 2 inches. But this is going to be awesome, and it won't interfere with these bolts coming through. So this is the tricky part if you're by yourself. You gotta hold all this stuff together, slide it in there, and then, oh, that hurts. Alright, now that we've got it pressed down far enough, we can see that. We'll just push this down over the top till it clicks in, and then that's going to be what holds it all together. And awesome! Okay, remember this piece? I said we were going to reuse that? Well, here is what I meant by that. Have you ever used a seal installer tool? Well, if you have a kit, you might not need to reuse that, but that's a pretty big one. And if you don't have it, and you don't want to go buy it or rent it, check this out. So I took that, it's the race, and that's the one I pulled out earlier that just popped out. and I welded it to a piece of tube, and then I took it over. It's a little bit too big at first, and I took it to the grinder and I just ground it down exactly to match this seal. Now I have a perfect seal installer that I can use to hammer this seal in. Let's show you how that goes in. Alright, so when you're doing this, you want to be real careful because you don't want to mess up this seal. So get you some grease and put it on there. I'm going to put it on here as well. Lightly tap this into the axle tube with our tool that we made, and I've got a cool little Tecton mini dead blow that I'm going to use. So it goes in just like this, and getting it started is the trickiest part. I'm going to try not to let it fall. Going to apply even pressure. Try to get that thing in. This is why it has to be the perfect size, because it actually recesses inside there. So if you were just using a 2x4 block or something, you wouldn't actually be able to get it all the way in. Alright, it's seated all the way against the bottom. I'm going to lube the actual seal itself, and we're ready to install the axle shaft. Oh, I almost forgot. Don't forget this seal. This is a Toyota seal. Like I said, it was hard to find. I'll leave part number down below. But I also found at the hardware store one very similar to it for a Culligan water filter. It was the same diameter, but it was a little thicker. But I think it would work in a pinch if you couldn't find this particular one. Alright, I went ahead and shot a little black paint on there. That's probably why I'm talking with an accent lately. I'm going to slide that in, try to hold it up. So now we just need to put everything back and hope like heck we didn't forget anything important. So I'm going to put these nuts back on and some of the brake stuff and catch up with you in a second here. Alright, check it out. I got the big stuff all tightened down right there. Make sure to tighten it good. I like to use R pounds, that's redneck pounds. If you used a breaker bar to take it off, use a breaker bar to put it back on. Alright, so that's tight. One of the other things I'm going to do is put a new wheel speed sensor in here. And since I had so much trouble with the previous ones, I think I might add a little bit of dielectric, or not dielectric, anti-seize. It does have a little rubber O-ring on there. Only goes in one direction. The front and rear on the driver's side are both the same sensor. Front and rear on the passenger side are also both the same sensor. But the passenger and driver's side are different. Holy cow, my camera is covered in anti-seize already. Can you see that? Just gonna pop that right back on. So put everything back the way you found it, including this guy right here. And I went ahead and bought the brake hardware kit. Basically it just comes with all the springs and stuff that you need. This is for the e-brake. Alright, I got the e-brake on. It's funny how the simplest part, or what you think is going to be the simplest part, turns out to be the hardest part of this whole project. But anyway, so that piece goes on there. The big side opening of this brake pad goes up top, around there. The red spring goes on there. First of all, put these things on to hold the pads in place while you're getting all this done. Next, put this little star piece in there, and then that spring up top. It's hard to see, but there's a black spring in there. There you go. Can you see that? And then, last but not least, put that red spring in there. And the red spring, it's easiest if you have one of these. This is like a trampoline tool that you get when you buy a trampoline. And that is super handy to reach in there and grab that spring and pull it back. and stick it in that hole. Alright, now I got new brakes to go on. These are slotted and drilled from Power Stop brakes, and it says rear passenger side, so make sure you got that correct. There we go. Look at this. So the caliper bolt is bent and seized inside the caliper bracket, and it's not coming out. So it's just one thing after another with this. Between the left and the right side, I'm also waiting on the O-ring for that side. Now I gotta go source not only the caliper, but the caliper bracket. And hopefully they come with bolts. If not, I'll need to get the bolts. It's just a never-ending nightmare with this truck. It originally came from Canada, and I feel for you Canadian guys, because there is just, I mean, it is just rust everywhere. Woohoo! Check it out. A day later and $1 shorter, actually about $200 shorter, I got the brake caliper and the bracket. So this is gonna go right here. I'll get all this loaded on. I've got the brake pads in there. Of course you want to lube the slides, and let's bolt this in. Alright, the caliper came with a new bolt, so make sure you put these washers, one on each side, and we're going to put that in here. Of course we have to bleed the brake line now that we took that off, but other than that, I think we're back to where we started. Well, alright guys, that was more than just bearings, but to do the bearings on a Toyota, you need to know how to do much more, including the parking brake, the regular brakes. You need to know how to do seals. You need to know how to use a press, maybe even make your own tool or two. So there's a lot involved if you're gonna do this job. But I hope you learned something today. And as always, it's Matt with BleepinJeep. And check out these videos right over here. You're gonna enjoy them just as much. We'll see you in the next one. BleepinJeep.